Hi, everybody. My name is Victoria Alexander. I'm the owner of Realty Collective, a boutique real estate firm I started 17 years ago to defy the stereotypes associated with real estate brokers in New York City. So my job is to be your coach, your guide, your best friend, your cheerleader, your emotional support person, your therapist, whatever role you need me to take to help guide you through this process. That is my job. And my job is not to find you the apartment that, uh, you know, is no longer listed, that would happen back in the day. Most properties that are going to be listed in the market and then be for action for sale are going to be listed by a seller's broker. I'm a buyer's broker. I represent buyers in this scenario. I often represent sellers as well, but when you walk into a piece of property, the broker that is there is representing the seller and their best interest. So you need a buyer's broker, and I'm one of 3 people that you need on your team. The other 2 people you need is a mortgage broker and a lawyer. That's why I'm going to introduce you to your dream team. Please introduce yourself, Lisa.
Hey everyone, my name is Lisa. I work at Cross Country Mortgage. I have been a loan officer for almost 10 years now. I really love working with first-time home buyers. And I think what makes me sort of stand out is that Cross Country is like the big banks, like Bank of America, Citibank, etc., but all we do is mortgages. And what that allows us to do is to have a whole bunch of options. And in this market environment, options are your friend. So I'm really excited to talk to you about the mortgage process and how I can help. And my specialty is first-time home buyers in New York City, condos, co-ops, multifamily, single family. I am licensed all over the country and I do deals all over the East Coast frequently. So New Jersey, Connecticut, etc. But my home base is really Brooklyn, New York City, etc. So excited to talk to you and see how I can help.
Take it away, Rashida.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rashida Sadiq. I'm a partner here at the law firm of Serpico and Sadiq. I have been practicing for 19 years now, and that's what I primarily do is real estate law. I'm licensed in New York, and I practice in all of the boroughs, Westchester, Long Island, Staten Island, and also I'm licensed to practice in New Jersey. I represent a lot of first-time buyers, so I'm here to give you kind of the tips and things that you should know. So as you look at attorneys, what you should be looking for as a process of purchasing for the first time. My office is located in downtown Brooklyn, and a small law firm, but we represent, as I said, we like to make sure that we're taking care of our clients and here to give you much knowledge on the process as the attorney standpoint. Look forward to giving you that information.
So the third person you need is me, your buyer's broker. And my job is to, like I said, be your coach, be your best friend, be your cheerleader, and help you through the emotional roller coaster of purchasing your first property in New York City. I've worked with Rashida and Lisa a very long time now. Rashida was actually the lawyer that I used when I bought my house 12 years ago, which is kind of crazy, but I'm so thankful that I did. And I know that the one thing that is on everybody's mind is rising interest rates, but really, rising rents should be on your mind too, because a lot of people are paying egregious rents right now that could be going towards a mortgage, and maybe you're paying close to what a mortgage would be. So my little job is to guide you through this process. I've owned this company 17 years, but I have about 20 years of real estate experience here specifically in the Brooklyn market. And my job is just to matchmake you with your dream property that might not be the dreams you have in mind when you start this process, but really to get you in line with what's happening in the Brooklyn market. And we all know that things have changed very rapidly from where we were just 1 year ago today. And, the one thing to consider is that my services don't come at a cost. They are free. The seller's broker. So when you go to sell your property, you'll be paying for two real estate brokers, the buyer's broker and the seller's broker. That's how it works. So you should take advantage of getting all the advice and expertise that you can by working with a buyer's broker. And that could be me or somebody else. The most important thing is you want to make sure you're picking the right team of people that you feel comfortable with, that you're going to listen to their advice, and that they're going to work together to make sure this transaction goes as seamless and smooth and stress-free as possible, because purchasing in New York City is very stressful. And so you want to make sure you have the right people at your side to make sure that they're taking that out of the equation for you as much as possible. So first slide. Why buy now? Like I just said, the rent is too damn high. You get to make your own design, investment long-term, building equity, investment in yourself. Tell everybody you're paying somebody's mortgage, either yours or your landlord's. Whose mortgage do you want to pay? Because your landlord, the money you give your landlord, you're never seeing that again. Anything I'm missing? I'm reading my notes from my phone because I forgot to print them out because I came upstate. The cost for between renting and buying has never been higher, which I said. And then, you're looking to stay in Brooklyn and staying in New York City. If you plan on leaving in the next couple of years, probably buying is not maybe a good decision for you. But if you're planning on staying in New York, the smartest thing you can do for yourself is get ahead of and buy now. Even with interest rates where they are, you are going to be beating the rental market because the rental market is going to continue to go up. Interest rates will eventually come down, but your rents will continue to go up. They have historically, even during, there was that huge dip in rents in COVID, but what happened after that? We all know, what the position a lot of people are in right now, unfortunately. So how to figure this out? Next slide, please. The rent to buy matrix. This is not my tool. This is the New York Times tool. You are going to plug in some numbers like how long you're going to stay in New York, what your rent is now, what your rent could potentially be. And Farah's putting the link in the chat. And then this will actually tell you if it's a smart reason to buy and what those numbers look like for you. And then the numbers will tell the story yourself. That is probably most likely you should be buying if you're staying in New York, at least for the next 4 to 5 years. Next slide, please. So the first thing you do before you go on Zillow, before you go on StreetEasy, is assemble your team. Like I said, the first 3 people that you need in your team is your real estate attorney, your mortgage broker, and your real estate broker. Got those down? Okay, other people you might need: contractor, architect, inspector. Good news is we have all of those people to refer to you, not just one person. I'm gonna give you a couple numbers for you to call and vet and find the right person that's right for you. So now that you've done that, you've put your team together. The next thing you do is make sure when you called your mortgage broker, next slide, you figure out what your financing scenario is and that what your buying power is. We all want you to get pre-approved before you start looking, so you understand how much you actually can afford in this market. If you're self-employed, it's important to be talking to your mortgage broker before you file your taxes. So we're coming up on the end of the year. If you own your own business, you want your mortgage broker and your accountant on the same page about what you're doing by the end of this year, so that your tax returns look the best for the bank next year for purchasing. And it's so important to do this step first before you start looking at properties, so you know what's available to you. How much down? Farah, the slides are a little wonky for some reason. I'm going to hand it over to Lisa to talk about the rest of the financing.
Thanks. So yes, as Victoria said, the most important thing to do before you start looking at places is to talk to a mortgage professional. And the reason is that you don't want to look at places you can't afford, because that's not fun for anyone. You also don't want to undercut what you could actually afford if you want to spend that much. So you're going to talk to a mortgage professional, and it's actually much more of a personal conversation than people think, particularly in this market. Okay, when you talk to me, I'm going to ask you some questions like, what's your plan for this property? How much do you think you want to spend? How much do you have for a down payment? Is a gift involved? Are you thinking of a co-op or a condo or a single family or a multi-family home? All of these things are really, really important criteria to find the right product for you. And as I'm sure you're aware, mortgage rates are up. We're in an inflation period. So having options is really, really important. And I think what I offer really well is I don't just have the 30-year or ARM option for a particular purchase price. I have a lot of different investors. So I can help figure out what is the best scenario for you and how that can work. I also am a preferred lender for New York State first time home buyers program, which is pretty awesome. It can give you up to 3%, basically free money to help with the down payment or closing costs. It is income restricted, so we have to make sure you qualify, but it's a really, really good option for first-time home buyers. The second thing that I will just say is in this environment where rates are up, something to consider is what's called a buy down option, where you include in the contract that Rashida will talk to you about shortly, a credit that sellers pay, which then helps your interest rate for the first 2 years. The fact is, whatever your interest rate that is when you close is not going to be your interest rate for 30 years. It's honestly going to be your interest rate for about 6 to 12 months. Because right now we're in an inflation period, and soon, within a year, if not less, we will turn to a recession period. And when that happens, we will refinance you. So it's really important to talk to a professional to figure out both your strategy to get the place of your dreams, as well as realizing what your payments are now and what they might look like later. I'm gonna ask for some information from you. If you're self-employed, I need to see your tax returns for the last 2 years. And we're gonna talk about what your 2021 looks like if you haven't filed it yet. 100%, as Victoria said, I need to see your tax returns before you file them to make sure we're on the same page in terms of getting you pre-approved. I'm going to run your credit. I'm going to look at your documents, and then we're going to talk about down payment. Do you want to do 20% down, which is the conventional, or do you want to do something like 10% down or 5% down? FHA requires as low as 3.5% down. If you do the first time home buyers program I talked about, you can pay as little as 0% down if the property fits the criteria. So that's the kind of stuff we're going to talk about. And then I'm going to run your credit and I'm going to get you a pre-approval. And that pre-approval is a working draft. So as you start to see things with Victoria, we can fine tune that pre-approval based on what you inevitably land at. And then we will go from there in terms of getting you started. But that's basically the pre-approval process. I think what's really, really important is for you to realize that it's sort of a fluid document. So we have to constantly stay in touch. And once I pre-approve you, it's based on the financial picture you gave me. So you can't do big things that change that financial picture without talking to me, such as leaving your job, opening up a new credit card, buying a new property. All of these things will change your financial picture, which will change your pre-approval. So that's why it's really important once you vet the person you want to vet and talk to them, that you really stay in constant contact with them. So we make sure that pre-approval is working through the volatile market we're in right now. Victoria, I'll give it back to you.
Okay. Do you want to talk about locking rates or anything? or you want to do that later?
I can do it now. So locking rate is a bit of a dance, right? As Rashida will talk to you about during the contract, once you lock rate, you are really on a time clock, which means that you have to lock the rate and close within that specific amount of time, or else you can pay extension fees and they get really expensive really fast. So if you are buying a co-op, for example, we will have a big discussion about if we should lock rate upfront, which is upfront is that fully executed contract. Um, because co-ops take a really long time. So you might end up paying extension fees that outweigh the difference of the increasing environment. If you are buying a condo or a single family home, the locking rate at fully executed contract might be something smart to think about. But that's really a discussion you need to have based on the property you're buying with your mortgage professional. I will say that when you get the pre-approval, the rate is a little bit of a placeholder because you might buy a place tomorrow, you might buy a place 3 months from now. So the most important thing at the pre-approval stage is just to make sure that you've assembled your correct team, you're on the right page, you've produced the correct documents, and that you are pre-approved for that purchase price, to know that when you go out and look at places, you are covered for the purchase price you're looking at.
And I think this is just a big part of it too, is understanding co-ops and condos and the local Brooklyn housing market. Anytime anybody's coming with me and they have a pre-approval from like Rocket Mortgage or wants to use their uncle as their lawyer, I really just encourage them to pick New York City experts, and that most of the time the brokers on the other deal want a second pre-approval from outside of just an online platform like Rocket or Quicken, so that those aren't usually valid even here in New York City. They have a hard time taking into account the difference in like co-op has much higher maintenance. Is that pre-approval for 500,000 with a $500 a month maintenance or $1,000 a month co-op maintenance fee. So understanding the local market is really important, and having trusted experts at your side that, I work with a lot of other brokers here in the area. When I call them with an offer or I bring them a client, I've probably done a deal with them before, and they know what kind of team player I am and how diligently I work for my clients, and that I'm a straight shooter. And so they, I would say I have a pretty high success rate of getting my clients' offer accepted, which really, just really bodes well for being a great advocate, along with my other team members when we all work together. If you want accountability is another big part of it. I have a relationship with Rashida and Lisa and lots of other people in the industry. And so I can call them and they will respond to me and give me updates and work with me because we work together a lot, and we have rapport and want to continue working together, and we'll work harder for each other because of that. So I think that making sure that you pick team members that have that kind of reputation is really important to be successful in making sure, you're getting the best opportunities to win apartments over other people, and why that could possibly be happening for you. So next slide. So you're ready. You're going to figure out your buying strategy, which comes into play with your timing, budget, family, lifestyle. What are the things that are important to your quality of life now and in the future? How long are you going to live in this place? Is it a place that you're potentially planning on growing into? Is this, a starter place and you're going to make a lot of sacrifices so that you can just get your foot in the door? Because you want to be on the train line where your job is now. You want to be close to the park, because right now your life is every day you go and run 5 miles in Prospect Park. So you want to be in an apartment on Prospect Park, but you also need to be on the 2-3 chain. Or is school district important to you? like I said, your commute. If you want a lot of amenities, you want to be probably in new construction and not in a brownstone neighborhood. So figuring out what kind of property is for you and what your timing is. Are you in a lease? Do you have to get out of that lease? Are you on month to month? Are you going to do this in 1 to 3 months? You're going to do this in 5 years. If you have 5 years, what are you going to do to make sure you're in that position to actually do this in 5 years? Are you working with a financial advisor or a financial coach to make sure you're getting your savings and your credit and everything fixed up so you look great to the bank? And how much do you want to spend? Some people are much bigger risk takers and are willing to, borrow against their 401k, sell all of their items in their life, but some people want to have a cushion. Like they want to have more than the co-op is asking them to have. People are like, oh, I have the down payment and I have the closing costs, but then they don't realize co-ops want you to have another amount of money left in your bank account to show that you're going to be able to afford to pay your maintenance for the next year and a half, usually. So understanding, your financial picture and what it looks like and what you're comfortable being at. So I think, God forbid, there is something, do you have the security blanket for next steps? So now that you have figured out, next slide, about all of those things, we're going to find your dream home. And so where are people looking? StreetEasy, realtor.com, Zillow. Just, Zillow is owned by StreetEasy. So you're looking at the same stuff, except for Zillow, people can pay to put sort of ads that don't have addresses and aren't real on there. So getting a little bit from the consumer side manipulated just a little bit. But StreetEasy is still a really great source, I would say, because it's fed sort of by the RLS. But we have a back-end system that you would be part of, that all members of REBNY, all the other brokers, so Corker and Compass, all the listings are in one place for you. It's not consumer-based right now. They are working on a consumer platform, though, to be competitive with StreetEasy. So you're going to think about location. And I talked a little bit about, being in new construction. What neighborhoods have new construction? Gowanus, Bushwick, Williamsburg, some little scattered in a little bit in Sunset Park, right? Any area that had sort of like a rezoning has a lot more new construction. Downtown Brooklyn, those are areas that's been rezoned. They've been upzoned so they can build bigger buildings. You're not really getting new construction in Cobble Hill, Carroll Gardens, Park Slope, those areas where it's like mostly brownstones. So if you're looking to buy there, a lot of co-ops in Park Slope, a lot of co-ops in Prospect Heights, and some condos and co-ops sprinkled through Bed-Stuy and Crown Heights, but a lot more townhouses. And then site, we just talked about if you want to be in a huge building, 100-unit building, or if you want to be in a 1 to 4 family. And then the type of building that it is, like brownstone or new construction. And then the amenities that come with that. Like if you really want a doorman, you're gonna want to be in new construction. If you really want architectural detail, you're gonna be in a brownstone. So really understanding, or in a pre-war co-op, right? That's in Brooklyn Heights. So just understanding the typology of the things that you want and what neighborhoods can actually provide those things for you. If you want to be in Williamsburg and you want architectural detail, it's going to be harder because then you're going to be competing with lofts, and lofts tend to be few and far between and much more higher price per square foot than, the newer construction, even the ones that are on the water. So working with somebody to figure out what that looks like is important. Okay, so we're searching. Go ahead. We're researching. Oh, I did this, the StreetEasy, realtor.com places. And like I missed some points on that point, the finding your dream home. Because I'm just not using my notes. I don't like looking at my phone while I'm on the screen. Oh, when you're making your list of things that you want, make your 5 deal breakers. Realize that of your 5 deal breakers, you're probably only going to get 2 or 3 of those things. You're going to have to sacrifice on something. This is New York City. Co-ops have about 1 to 3% in closing costs and about 3 to 5% for condos. New construction comes with a lot. So if you're buying in a building that has never been lived in before, one, you're gonna have to be patient. You have to wait for that C of O. It's not like, oh, I bought it, we put in an offer, we're closing within 90 days, like a regular contract, which Rashida will go over with you. We're waiting for the Department of Buildings and the city to sign off on everything, and it is a waiting game. And you're at the will of the other agencies to say, the building's ready to be habitable, and then the bank can get everybody in there. And then that even takes a little bit of time. So you just have to be really patient. It comes with a lot of extra fees, like the taxes, they get pushed on to the buyer usually. So we're looking, and where do we find these things? Talked about the RLS. And when you're looking at the listings online, the name that's on the listing, that's the seller's broker. Or Zillow will trick you and not even put the seller's broker, because people pay to have their names added to listings on a lot of sites. Street Easy even now has get in touch with the pro because they're owned by Zillow. So just be careful, because you can all of a sudden be on, so put your name and phone number into this place and getting a lot of calls from people that you haven't vetted, that you haven't got recommendations for, that are there trying to get your business because they're paying to get leads. The other thing is, again, if you're walking into a listing, it's owned by that listing agent, there is representing the seller. You want somebody that's representing you. They have a fiduciary responsibility to the seller. They're working, even though they're nice and they're smiling and they seem like really helpful, they are working for the seller. Their best fiduciary responsibility by the Department of State is to the seller. They have signed a contract. So just be wary of that. And then, like I said before, figuring out if a co-op or a condo is right for you. And there we have a little quiz that Farah's going to put in the chat, and figuring out if a condo or co-op is right for you. So making an offer and negotiating. It is so important that when you start looking at properties, that you are ready. And that is our job to prepare you. But we can only say so many times, have your pre-approval ready. Start working on your cover letter, fill out your submit offer form, fill out your revenue financial form, have all your paperwork and your proof of funds together, because you will fall in love with the first place you look at, and then you will be scrambling to get everything together, and another person might jump in right before you, just because they have everything done. So when I delegate homework to you, do it. You will not regret it. The other thing is, you want to make sure that if you're ready and you're looking, and you've been in the market a while, you're going out every weekend and looking at property, and finally you see the right one has come to the market and everybody else has seen it too, you want to get your offer in first. There's a psychology to this that really pulls on the heartstrings of sellers, and they automatically feel engaged in negotiating with you because you're the first offer. So it's very important, if you're serious about a property and it's the one, you get your offer in first. One of the main reasons that you're working with a buyer's broker is their relationship with the other brokers, and working on a strategy with them, and then them calling and putting a good word in for you with the other broker on the other side, and establishing that rapport. Even if they don't have a relationship, making sure that they get along. If you have a broker that you're working with and they are challenged by working with other people or talking negatively about the other broker, that should be a red flag for you. You also want to talk, putting in the first offer doesn't mean you have to put in your highest and best offer. You want to work with your broker to create a negotiation strategy. You work with your agent to create and devise a strategy together, so that you know the highest number you're willing to go to and where your comfort level is, and you're not pressured by the other offers around you or other people around you, or what the seller's broker is saying. And you don't want to be emotionally driven outside of your comfort zone, so that you are making decisions that you regret later, because there is buyer's remorse when you're pushed in a certain way. And everything needs to be negotiated before your offer is accepted. So when Rashida gets the deal sheets, which is what happens after your offer is accepted, we can't go back and negotiate terms. The terms are written out in that deal sheet, and we're not negotiating them. So if it's an as-is sale, or if it includes the chandelier, or if the seller wants to stay in the apartment a month after closing, those are the terms of the deal, and they go on the deal sheet. She's not going to negotiate anything except for maybe issues that come up in the inspection, which happens after your deal is accepted and the deal sheets go out. So now that if you're, some of the terms that are in the deal sheet are, is your offer contingent on financing? Is your offer contingent on inspection? And the contract terms of the bidding, if there was like a bidding war, are you paying over ask? Do you have a mortgage? Are you waiving the appraisal contingency? Those are the sort of things that go on the deal sheet. So I'm gonna let Rashida talk about the negotiating and the getting into contract phase.
Okay, so thank you, Victoria. So, so now that you found the property, your initial terms have been negotiated, purchase price, mortgage contingency. You have all of that information on the deal sheet. It gets turned over to the attorneys. Some of the things that happen prior to you going into contract, depending on the type of property, are the following: an inspection, whether it's a co-op, condo, or house. I do advise that you do an inspection because it goes into play with this as-is clause that will be in your contract of sale. As-is means that you understand the condition of the property and that you accept that condition, which means that if something's broken, like a window, that falls into the as-is provision. So that's why it's important that you do your inspection, because now you can go and you have a professional. They look at the boiler, they look at the windows, they look at, to see if there's been any leaks. They look at the appliances, check the electricity, and those type of things will be in your inspection report. And you get it, you review it. If there's things that have to be fixed, that can be incorporated into the contract and negotiated to make sure that any repairs or credits or reduction in the purchase price are accounted for. But that also, as I said, the inspection is very important, because now once you determine, I've done the inspection, I understand the condition, I know what as-is means, and you're putting that into the contract, you know that, okay, I paid a particular price for this. The price was lowered. I'm going to potentially have to redo the roof, or, the windows potentially need to be redone. That is very important that you do your inspection prior to you signing the contract, especially in New York. You can't sign the contract until you've done your inspection. If you waive your inspection, if you don't decide not to do an inspection, sometimes people do that when they're buying a co-op or condo, depending on the size of the building. But as I said, I do advise that you do one, just so at least for your reference, you know what you understand that condition to be. So that happens prior to you signing the contract. One of the other things that are in a contract is due diligence. Well, prior to signing the contract is due diligence review. And that's if you're buying a co-op or a condominium. So you love the property, you put in your offer, it's been accepted. Next is for your attorney to review all of the underlying documents of that building. So the attorney is reviewing the offering plan, the financials, the board meeting minutes. And the part of the reason for that due diligence is so that you understand, as I said, what you're buying into. Is there a history of maintenance increases? Is there an upcoming assessment? Is there litigation? Has there been noise complaints regarding your unit? Have there been alterations or renovations done? So you want to, once again, get a bigger picture on what you're purchasing, whether it's a co-op or a condominium, when your attorney is doing that due diligence. And that due diligence in the contract of sale, it states that you've done your due diligence, you reviewed all of the underlying documents for that building, or your attorney has. And once again, you're taking it subject to all of the house rules, the application, the fees, and things like that. So once again, before you get it into contract, that's part of the attorney's due diligence on doing the underlying for a co-op and for a condo. For a house, now there's not a lot of due diligence that your attorney can do. Some attorneys just particularly would just review the contract. Myself, I do like to look up the property, see if there's any open permits or violations such as Department of Buildings or HPD violations, so that we have a heads up going into contract, so we know more about a time frame. Now, the attorney can't review all of the title because that happens after you get into contract, but at least you have an understanding, hey, there's a Department of Buildings violation on the property, or there's an open electrical permit for a house that needs to be closed off by the seller. Now, once again, goes back to the negotiation. before you sign the contract. The certificate of occupancy, your attorney can look to see if there's one on file for that. So these things that your attorney is doing as part of the due diligence in before you even get to that signing of the contract. And the reason you do want to do all of this due diligence upfront to the extent that they can is that you try to, I think of it as being preventative. The more prevention you can do upfront is than wasting your time. Time is important, especially if you're getting a mortgage. And of course, if you need to vacate and you need to move out, you don't want to wait 30 days to find out there was a violation that is going to take the seller 60 to 90 days to clear. And you're already ready to, you've got your commitment, you have a rate lock issue, and you're ready to close. And now you have this issue that you could have found out from the beginning of the process. Not to say that everything can be found out in the due diligence, but it's some things that your attorney tries to do as much as possible before you enter into contracts. Other things as far as that deal sheet, I know Victoria had mentioned about the contingencies inspection prior. Your contract is going to have a bunch of contingencies that are going to be in your contract of sale. And we can talk about that as far as well as get it once you're into contract. We talked about the due diligence and the things that we would do as an attorney. So once you get into contract, I think that's into the next slide. Yes, now you're in contract. So the things that happen in your contract, there are certain provisions. For if you're buying a co-op, you're going to have two contingencies. One is your mortgage, and your time frame typically in your mortgage is 30 to 45 days to get a commitment. That's when you're going to be working with Lisa or your loan officer to make sure the bank is doing what they need to do behind the scenes, getting the appraisal done, confirming the co-op or the condominium. The second contingency in a co-op is your board approval. And that happens after your commitment is issued. There's an application that the realtors would have gotten in the beginning of the process. Your attorney would have gotten in the beginning of that due diligence process that you should have already started working on. Typically in the contract, you have 5 days to submit your application to the board, and then you're waiting for them to review the application, give you an interview, and then your approval. So your timeframes once you're in contract for a co-op can be 60 to 90 days, sometimes more, but typically 60 to 90 days for a closing for a co-op. If you're looking at a house, your time frames are typically a lot less because your main contingency in a house contract is your mortgage contingency, once again, 30 to 45 days, and then of course, getting good title to the property, which your attorney will order and make sure there's no judgments, violations, taxes are being paid, the mortgage is being paid off. So your typical house contract will have maybe a 30 to 60 day closing, depending on 45 to 60 day closing, depending on if you're getting a mortgage, if it's all cash, or how quickly they want to get to the closing date, which depends on availability of all the parties. And similarly for a condominium, your closing timeframes are typically about that 45 to 60 day period as well, because you don't have the second approval that you need to do for a co-op. Now, condominiums are they do have applications, and some of them do require your commitment. So once again, your time periods may go a little bit longer. A lot of the applications are similar to what is a co-op, but you don't have this approval by the co-op, the condominium board. They have what we call as a right of first refusal waiver, which is more of a formality, but you still have to sometimes fill out an application in order for the board to issue that letter. And your attorney will go over the timeframes with you in regard to that. So 60 to 90 days you're looking at, depending on the type of property that you're purchasing once you're in contract. There's back end, your loan officer will be in touch with the bank attorney who's involved. Your attorney will be getting certain documents from you, we call Aztec or recognition agreements. Your realtor will be putting together the application with you, and that's all part of the board process, the board application process. I don't know if Lisa, you want to talk about the due diligence and the bank part of it. Once you're in contract, what happens on that aspect of it?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So as Rashida explained, So it's really important that your attorney and your loan officer have a good relationship. And there's a lot of really important reasons for that. One of which is that Rashida's gonna, when she does her due diligence, particularly if it's a co-op, she's gonna reach out to me because we work together a lot. And she's gonna say, hey, Lisa, this is what's showing up on the board minutes, or this is what's showing up on the financials. Is this gonna be an issue? And 9 times out of 10, it's not. But the more you have, particularly for a co-op, the more you have that information up front, the better. And the dialogue you have with an attorney and loan officer that works together frequently is really invaluable. But so, okay, you've gone through due diligence, everything looks great. You have signed a contract, and now you are what we call live, which is that this is moving from pre-approval to a true loan application. So we're going to do a lot of things. First of all, you have gotten me all of the documents up front for a pre-approval. So all I have to do is update a few things. And then we are going to order the appraisal. We are going to get you initial disclosures. And we're going to talk to you about if we're going to lock you up front or if we're going to wait. And again, like I talked about earlier, it's really a time question. If this is a co-op, it doesn't really make sense unless you're willing to take the risk of an extension fee to lock up front. If it's a single family home or it's a condo, maybe it makes sense. We will talk about those options to decide if we should lock you up front or not. And then you will get initial disclosures to e-sign. And our motivation from then on is to get you prepared and through underwriting as soon as possible. And where I think me and my team really shine is how fast we are at getting you through underwriting. The big banks take 2 to 3 weeks. We get it done in 2 to 5 days. So we move really quickly to get you through underwriting and get you that commitment letter. And that is important for a lot of reasons, particularly if you are buying a co-op. The co-op will not schedule an interview until you have the commitment letter from the bank. That's basically the stamp that says, this is good, we're ready to roll. And once you have that commitment letter, you can schedule your interview with the co-op. Some co-ops come back and say, hey, come in tomorrow. Other co-ops say it'll be 2 or 3 months. And you just have to sort of, you can't push the co-op on when they want to have your interview. All you can do on your side is to be prepared. So once you get the commitment, you will have some conditions. Those conditions could be something super simple like homeowners insurance, because unless you're buying a co-op, you need to have homeowners insurance, and you need to have a secure policy, and the policy needs to be paid for the first year, either prior to or at closing. Other things might be an updated verification of employment or something really little, right? So my team will work on helping you through those conditions. And then we will basically be waiting until the rest of the team is ready to close, or you get the board approval to get you closed. Once everything's ready to roll, we have what's called the clear to close, which basically means that we are ready to go. Let's get this scheduled. Rashida will do her thing, and you guys will get closed and get your home.
Rashida, I'm sure you have some things to add to that, and so do I. Do you want to jump in first?
So yeah, I guess with just the timing wise, as far as getting the application, once the application is in, and the clearance to close aspect of it is that typically your application is submitted to the board, you get the approval, the bank gives the clearance to close. You, from that point, depending on the co-op, especially, it can be anywhere from another 2 weeks or so. I've seen it a little bit longer sometimes, but about another 2 weeks for you to actually schedule your closing. and I'm working with the various parties to get you, your attorney is working with the various parties to schedule that closing. And so I guess with the rate, locking in your interest rate. Lisa had mentioned that as well. So always have a conversation with your realtor, your attorney, and your loan officer on, if you're locking in your rate, where are you with the process? Because especially for co-ops, because of the kind of the third party approval of the co-op board, we can try to give you a sense of when we can schedule, or, typically, but you don't want to do a 60-day lock for a co-op, because realistically, it's not going to happen in 60 days. We can push, but for a co-op, very rarely would you see a closing happen in 60 days if there's a mortgage. For a condo and a house, you could probably do a 60-day to, get you closed. But definitely, I would say very rarely for a co-op.
So just to jump back in here, when you get your offer accepted, the due diligence happens, deal sheets go out, you sign your contract, then the appraisal happens. Once the appraisal happens, that's when the bank is working on the commitment. And if you're buying in a co-op, we're working on your co-op package. We're also communicating with the management company, if there is one. Almost all the bigger co-ops have one, but if you're buying into a small 1 to 8 family co-op, they might not have a management company, and that's when things can go slightly awry. But what Lisa's talking about and Rashida is understanding the timeline of the co-op. And so that we are asking the management company what their turnaround times are. Sometimes the management company holds your package for 1 to 2 weeks. So we're working to get all your data and information into this beautiful package. It's going to present really well to the co-op board. They're going to hold on to it for 2 weeks before they even put it in front of the co-op board. And understanding that from day one is super important for the rate lock and to understand your timeline. So, and you're making sure the bank has everything so that they give you the commitment so we can get the co-op package in as soon as possible, because that's the most important thing, because we want the appraisal to happen within the first week after a contract is signed. So once the management company releases the co-op package to the co-op board, then we can schedule the interview. We will then prep you for the interview process to make sure that you actually pass the board interview and say all of the right things in exactly the right way, or not say things. That's one of the biggest parts of it, is leaving some information out to get you approved. Then you get approved, and hopefully they tell the management company to tell the bank right away and get you that official letter saying you've been approved immediately. Sometimes there's a little bit of a delay to always be wary of, and that's why we're just wary of locking your rate. So all that happens, then you get to the closing table. Rashida does the circus act of a juggling act of getting everybody there and organizing, which is a big feat. And then you sign 10,000 times, your wrist hurts, and you get your keys. Before that, 2 days before, we do the final inspection to make sure the house or property is being delivered in the condition. They've done all the things that they said they've done if we had to have repairs done, and it is being delivered to you in the condition that you expect it to be. And then you can move in. Do not schedule your movers the day of the closing. Do not schedule anything until 100% things are happening. Everything is, there's a lot of moving parts and things get juggled around. And I always hate to see clients where they're like, well, but we scheduled our movers for today. And like, well, the bank didn't get the money in, or this didn't happen. And there's just too many people working together to make it happen. One thing doesn't happen, it's just going to get delayed a day, and then your move gets delayed. So, but the most exciting thing is that you get your keys and the property is now yours. And you have 30 days then to have to pay your first mortgage payment and become official homeowners. Change your address and then vote. So
I'm gonna just add one thing about the movers thing, because this happens a lot with first-time home buyers.
Yeah,
and I
go
get
for it.
You want to secure mover and you want to get the best rate possible. My honest friend-to-friend opinion is, if you're renting and you're month to month, just suck it up that there's going to be a month that you pay for rent to give yourself that wiggle room for the movers. because you really cannot schedule movers until the minimum you have the clear to close. Otherwise, you're gonna stress yourself out from what's a more stressful situation than it needs to be, simply because until you have the clear to close, you don't have a secured, and Rashida has worked to give you a secure date. You don't know when you're moving. So it's really, really important, because unfortunately what happens is people schedule their movers and then they come to me, or they come to Rashida, or they come to Victoria and say, I already scheduled my movers, I don't want to pay a penalty. And there's nothing we can do about it, because the timeline is based on a whole bunch of different factors. And unfortunately, they don't care that you've already scheduled your movers. So just to get in the right framework when you start, just wait until you have the clear to close to do any of that stuff, because it will make your moving experience so much better and so much less stressful. Those are my 2 bits.
I couldn't agree more. It is very stressful if you're trying to get everything all pushed into this short amount of timeline. It's a lot. So that's why we are just warning you now not to do that to yourselves. So now we're going to open up for questions. I'm just going to remind everybody that if you missed any part of this, we're going to send out this recording. So you'll have it to watch, to send to friends, whoever. You will also get a copy of our Buying into Brooklyn ebook after this, and an email with all of our contact information. You can schedule a one-on-one conversation with any of us. You are going to have to hire all 3 of these people to engage in this process. And even if you're a year out, happy to talk to you about getting this started. It's okay, you have to jump off. Well, thank you. But you can put your questions in the chat, or just take yourself off mute and we can have a conversation about anything that you're still curious about. If you're working with me as your buyer's broker, we set you up with all of our resources. We have a library of resources that we organize through a project management tool called Basecamp. So at every step of the way, you're getting resources associated with that part of the process. You get set up on RealTMX, which is the back end search engine that the public doesn't have access to. You're very welcome. And I'm gonna send you a link to set up a call link if you want to do that. So again, send me any of your women-owned businesses that you know. Thank you for today's session, and any questions before everybody signs off. Anybody? I always say, okay, we're gonna sign off, and then someone jumps in. Okay. So if there's no questions, you'll get a follow-up email with all of our contact information, lots of resources to help you start the process, even if you feel like you're not ready to do it. You never start too early to establish these relationships and start building your way towards homeownership. The faster you do it, the faster you can get out from underpaying rent and building your own equity and investing in yourself. The smartest thing that you can do for yourself if you plan on staying here in New York. So thank you, everybody, and have a good night.